Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Hear Our Voices podcast. Let's get some housekeeping in the way. So, I want you guys to go check us out on social media: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We're on there all the time. If you personally want to speak to me, you can. Because I'm gonna tell you the truth. Sometimes people who are on our team. It's about four of us. They do check the messages, but if you want to personally get to me, I can put my social media down below at Kayda Davis on basically all the platforms. To be honest, if you have any questions, people are DMing me. I am happy to answer any questions. I'm up all types of parts of the night. It doesn't matter what time it is. I'm up. If I know the answer, I'll tell you right away. If I don't know the answer, I'll find somebody who will know the answer to give it to you. I think it's very important to get the word out there and get the information out to people who need the information. If you see a topic that you like about CityFHEPS, things like that, go and check it out. If you don't see a topic that we didn't cover yet, tell me the topic and we could definitely cover it for you and anybody else who would like to know. So we are happy to get ideas anytime. If you want to be a part of the podcast, guys, check us out. DM us on Instagram, on Twitter, and you could be a part of the podcast. You could do it without your face, with your face. It doesn't really matter. Also, if you would like to if you have any resources that needs to be a part of the podcast, or if you just want to be part of our resource packet, we would love to have that information. Right now, we're only covering New York City with the resource packet, but we're taking stories from anywhere in the US at the moment. So sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoyed the podcast, guys. Thank you for coming in. So my guest today is John. I know him for a couple of years now, and he's doing great work. But before we even get into what he's doing, I want you to really understand how he got to this point. So I want him to tell me a little bit about himself, because most times a lot of people get into this, realm of philanthropy and things like that, but they have a backstory, and sometimes we don't think about how did this person become be in this business or want to do this thing. But I like to know his backstory first before we get into what he does for the homeless community in New York City. I'm not sure it's all over. I think we actually, because I'm in this I'm part of this group. So I think we have people from other states, I believe, too. So it's not only New York that we're helping out at the moment. So yes. So John, tell me a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your childhood and things like that.
Sure. Thank you for having me on, Kadisha. I'm excited to be a guest. So I'm John. I am originally from New Orleans, and that's where I was born and raised. I grew up there with a single mom and two older sisters. I'm the baby. My parents separated when I was really little, and maybe 4 or 5 or something. And my mom raised us. And I think, I know a big reason why I've spent my whole career in housing, affordable housing and homelessness related work was we had a really tough housing situation when we were kids. We were evicted a couple of times, and we had lived with my grandparents for a while when I was little after we were evicted. And I like, that the trauma of that, the instability of that, constantly moving apartments, not being able to afford rent, having an eviction notice on the door, from the sheriff that your stuff was going to be taken away. Those kinds of things when you're a kid are really scary and destabilizing. And as I got older, it became more. New Orleans is a really intensely racially unequal place, very segregated and very oppressive in some ways to Black households who have been, struggling against that for, more than a century. And I realized as I got older, that, and I learned and I studied about the history of housing in the U.S., that my family was white, benefited, even though we were very housing unstable. We never ended up going into shelter. We were able to live with my grandparents, largely, because of a history in the country of housing policy that supported white home ownership and robbed Black households and communities of ownership opportunities.
Right.
So, when I was in college, I wrote my thesis on the history of the mortgage, which sounds really boring, but it's super interesting. The, the mortgage we have today, the 30-year mortgage that people use to buy a house with a low down payment, comes from the New Deal in the Depression. The government created that financial tool so that middle class people could afford to buy a home, which they couldn't before that existed. But the government would only insure mortgages for white homeowners, and they made banks investigate the home in the neighborhood to make sure there weren't black neighbors, that it wasn't an integrated neighborhood, and they asked all kinds of horrible questions about the presence of black people in the neighborhood, and that over decades that helped white people get homes who otherwise wouldn't have been able to buy homes and afford homes, and it trapped black, mostly migrants from the South who were moving to northern cities for manufacturing jobs, in limited neighborhoods without access to loans to buy homes or to fix homes up. So the housing stock in those neighborhoods fell apart because there was no loans for it to fix it up, and no one could buy it. The prices went up, and it robbed black communities of home ownership opportunities and wealth and stability, at the same time that it gave those opportunities for wealth and stability to white communities. So, my grandparents directly benefited from this. They had mortgages that were insured in this way. My grandfather was a veteran, so he was able to get VA loans, and they owned their home. If my grandparents had been black, it would have been much less likely that they would have been able to own a home. And when you're a renter, as most of us know, you can't. It's very hard to add people to the lease, and usually you don't have space. So if my grandparents had to own their home, they wouldn't have been able to fit, 4 other people in their house indefinitely, or they wouldn't have been allowed to if they did have the space by the landlord. So, we benefited directly from those policies, and were able to avoid shelter, because we had somewhere to go in our network. And learning all that and understanding all that has motivated me to want to change it, and to want to direct resources directly to black households and communities, so that they have the wealth and opportunity, not only to avoid shelter, but to pursue their dreams and their aspirations in the ways that white communities who have wealth have been able to do it. So that's why I do what I do.
So he
That
told
was a
me
long answer.
It's fine. That's what we're here for. We're here to hear your story and know why you became the person you are today. It's just so interesting that people would probably look at me and you're like, she probably was evicted. He had a great childhood, but it doesn't matter what you look like. I want people to understand it doesn't matter what you look like or what background you come from. Anybody could be evicted. It can affect anybody, any spectrum of person. It doesn't matter how hard you work sometimes. It could just happen. People could become homeless because of any sorts of reason. I try to tell people all the time, it could be from DV, it could be from a fire. A lot of people are only literally 1 month of money that they have going paycheck to paycheck just to survive. And as you heard, his mom was a single mom with 3 kids. Granted, it was a different time and a different state he was living in, but it doesn't matter. Hard times is hard times no matter who you are, what background you have. It can happen to anybody. And that's what, I want people to get out of this. It doesn't matter who you are. Don't feel ashamed that you went through this thing, because whatever path in life you take, you're meant to take that path to make yourself better and to make the people you come around better. And John does that. I could tell you that he helps out a lot of people. The group that he has people, 4 different people who are lived experience, 2 for families and 2 for youth. He doesn't only help out people with families. Our thing is based on like family homelessness, but he help out other areas of homelessness. And people sometimes we forget about youth homelessness. We forget about family. They only think about people who are usually singles, because I feel like you see that more. And also people on the street. That's not the only people who are homeless. Not because you see us kind of tucked away in a corner and we're kind of forgotten about, doesn't mean it's not happening. It's still happening. And we're trying to really put a light on that with this podcast, giving resources, and also telling the stories of people out there who are affected by this, who we don't see, who's invisible. So I'm just really delighted that he came on. I just want him to kind of reminisce about, probably not reminisce too much, but like when you was a child and being evicted. Because I think sometimes we kind of think about the adult, like it happened when I was an adult. My daughter was very young. She had no memory of us being in shelter. But when eviction is happening when you're a child, how does it affect you? What do you remember happening to you? So people can understand how can this thing affect their children. I think we don't think
I
about
mean,
it.
I was probably 10. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. My connection's a little unstable, so I'm sorry if I cut you off.
You're fine. You're fine.
I yeah, I remember it really clearly. I mean, I don't know how reliable my memory is because it was so scary and I was so little that, I remember the thing that I remember most is the sheriff's notice on the door. This green piece of paper appears on our door, and I can't remember if it was when we woke up or when I got home from school. And, my mom trembling, reading it, and you can tell from your kid, kid obviously doesn't know fully what it means, but you can sense how big a deal it is from how your parent is reacting.
Right.
And my mom, I can read it, and it says like whatever time period we were given, 24, 48, 72 hours, to leave and get all our stuff out. Otherwise it was going to be taken away. But, when you're a kid, I immediately start thinking all my bed, all my toys, my books,
Right.
all the things I care about are going to be taken away.
Right.
We don't have anywhere to go. I was thinking we were going to be in the car. Where would I take a shower? Where would I brush my teeth for school? Just like all these questions. And, we're all standing around me and my sisters, my mom, like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Where are we going to go? What about my stuff? And she can't answer. And it's really scary to be a kid and to see your parent put in that position of not knowing what's going to happen next. So, I remember a lot of relief, but still some fear when we moved into my grandparents' house because we didn't know how long we were going to be there. They lived outside of New Orleans, and so it was far from my school. And my sister and my mom had to share a bed, and we just still, eventually we got used to it, and we lived there for over a year, and it was fine. My grandparents are wonderful, and we're indebted to them for the rest of our lives for that. That for taking care of us until we got back onto our feet. But those initial moments were scary, and we don't realize how much our sense of well-being comes from our home and having somewhere to go to every day that's safe, that's quiet, where you can do homework, where you can play. All of that is really, it's something most of us take for granted, I think.
That's true, definitely. It's a lot. Did your mother explain what was happening to you? Like what happened to the family? Or did she just kind of like, guys, pack, let's go. We have to go to grandma's house for a little while. How did she do it? Like, I want people to probably, especially for older kids who might understand a little bit more than a 2 or 3-year-old, how to probably tell their kids or how not to tell their kids about what's happening to them.
I think she did make sure to know we were going to be safe no matter what. We were going to be safe. We'd stay together. And, I think very quickly she called my grandmother and explained to us that that's what we were going to do. And I think once we had a plan, and it felt like my mom that we had a plan again, that we could adapt. And kids are incredibly adaptable and can live in so many different circumstances. Like, I think that's what, my mom loves us, and we're going to figure it out. And just hearing that over and over, that you're loved, that there's the grown-up is figuring it out, that we may not know exactly what's going to happen right away, but we'll figure something out. Hearing that over and over, you eventually is soothing. And eventually you can, go back to focusing on the things that kids focus on.
Right.
After that
in school. Pretty much. So let's get
cool.
into your
really
work.
Care about
that's true. That's all they think about is children. They don't think about that much things at all, to be honest. But you'd be surprised. These kids nowadays, I think, are a little bit different than me and you growing up. It seems like they have the world on their shoulders a little bit compared to us. But it's been a different time, so that's how it is. You know. But I think we could get into your work a little bit. What do you do exactly for the homeless community abroad in the US, I should say, right now? And how did you initially get into it? How did you kind of start going into that world?
Yeah, that's really good. So when I was in high school, I went to a talk on social justice and inequality, and I listened to this guy who was an economist talk about talk something about the history of mortgage lending in the country. The thing that I talked about earlier, how there's sort of these hidden systems that mainly help white people own homes and buy land, and have been and that our society has withheld from Black communities and households that wanted to do the same thing, buy homes, own land, and how that played out over decades, over centuries even, to create white middle class wealth and to rob Black households of middle class wealth. And I listened to that, and it just made immediate sense to me. It explained the story I told, of why my family being evicted, we were still able to avoid homelessness, but why so many Black families who are evicted in the same circumstances can't, because in that network there isn't home ownership because of this history. There isn't as much home ownership. There's less, so you're more likely to not have anywhere to go in your network. Everybody more people are renters and can't take you in when you're evicted. And so, even though what you were talking about, Khadijah, that anyone can face eviction, anyone can face housing instability, most households are struggling to pay rent and get by month to month.
Right.
In a white community, there's more home ownership because of this history. And so when a family does get evicted or is housing unstable, they have another home to go into, or they have some wealth or space to tap into as a cushion. And we have Black and brown communities of that cushion. So I went up to the guy afterwards and I was like, I've been trying to understand that my whole life, which was not very long at that point. I was still a kid. And like, what are people doing about this? Are there jobs? Are there careers in this space? And he told me about, the world of affordable housing, and got me an internship at a community development corporation, which is a nonprofit that builds affordable housing. And I interned for them for the summer. And then that's all I've ever done ever since, basically. I worked for groups like that in different capacities, some of them nonprofit. I worked for this New York City government for its affordable housing department agency that finances the development of affordable housing in New York. I worked for a bank that lends and invests in affordable housing in New York mainly, and also makes grants. And in that work, I started to get more and more involved, not just in housing, but in homelessness and in the systems like shelter systems and other systems that the city has set up to respond to the crisis of homelessness. And it was super eye-opening because I'd spent at that point, 15 or more years working in affordable housing, and I knew nothing about shelters. And that whole system. So ever since then, I've tried to work more directly, exclusively on connecting the worlds of homelessness and shelter to the worlds of permanent affordable housing. Because shelter is not a solution to homelessness. When you're in shelter, you're still homeless.
Right.
The solution is a home. It's in the word.
Right.
Homelessness is a home. And so I'm trying to work to connect those systems and to make sure that we're building homes and connecting people in shelter to homes, not just services, but to homes. And what you're doing, Khadijah, is so exciting to me, because one of the biggest problems with the shelter system is that it's built on this idea that people are homeless because of their own fault, because of sort of an individual household level failing, right, when that's not the case. People are homeless, everyone has hard times. Everyone loses jobs. There's no one's income is set to the cost of housing. Those are two completely different markets.
Right.
So anyone at risk of housing instability, the failure is the system. The failure is what I described, that we've built up white wealth and we have prevented Black communities from building up wealth. And so we've created a system that pushes Black people into greater danger when they're housing unstable. And we need to address that as a root cause. We also just don't build enough affordable homes. You know, like we've learned that if you're going to provide school to everyone, which we think is necessary, the public has to do it. You can't just leave it to the schools, you know, or they won't teach everybody.
Exactly.
That's true for healthcare. If you only provide healthcare to people that can afford it, tons of people won't get healthcare. So we've learned that, like, we as the public have to provide healthcare to everyone. Housing is the same thing. The cost of housing has nothing to do with people's income, or not enough to do. They're not linked. So if we're gonna, and everyone has to have a home to survive and to thrive. We have to learn that we, through different ways, we as the public have to provide a home to everyone in some way. So that's what we're working on. And specifically, I launched this thing called the New York City Fund to End Youth and Family Homelessness. This is what Khadijah and I work on together.
Right.
It's a group of foundations and lived experts who are advocates who come together, and we pool money from different foundations, and we make decisions about where to make grants with that money. So Khadijah sits on the board of this. I'm the staff person, and together, me as the staff with the board, come up with a strategy for, you know, how we want to tackle this with the money that we have. And then we make grants to nonprofits that are working in this space to prevent and to end homelessness for youth and families. That's our focus.
Yes. And he's doing a lot of great things. There's a lot of different things we work on right now. And I can't wait to explore more with John. He does so much. Keep your ears out. A lot of things are in store for New York City. We're here not to just, you know, sit on the sidelines and just watch it happen. We're here to really get in the game and really play all areas that we need to kind of help homelessness. And honestly, when you kind of clean up one area of homelessness, hopefully the rest of them kind of follow suit. And what I don't know if it's all the states, but I just know mostly about New York City, that they break homelessness in so much categories: men, women, youth, and then they break it in families. To me, I feel like it shouldn't matter what sector you're in. The point is that the word is that we're all homeless. And the pretty word they try to use right now is unhoused. Was like, that's just the point is that we're homeless. Don't try to make it sound better to a suit make you feel better. No, the point is that we're homeless. Well, I'm not homeless anymore. People are homeless and they want to get into a home. It's not a better feeling than being in your own place with your own keys by yourself if you choose. Like, it's so good. Like, when I first moved into my apartment, even though it was in the ghetto in NYCHA, I live in the projects. You already know this. And it was a different world for me because I grew up in a house in Queens, and as people call Queens, the suburbia, because they have less buildings. And I lived in a house for 20-something years. But living in a shelter for over a year and having to go on a curfew, have to eat their nasty food if I didn't have money for something. But most times I had money, thank God for that. And not like it's just to have your own place and to have your own keys and have to answer to nobody other than paying in New York City the rent. It's just like it's a good feeling. Even though I slept on the floor for a couple of days because I didn't get my blow up bed on time. Me and my daughter, I had my sheets and I was like, I don't have a bed, but I'm so grateful to be in this place because it's just like being in shelter is just not it. And honestly, at first I was gonna sleep on the street. And my ex-husband was like, at the time it was my husband, you can't do that. Like, you're pregnant. Why are you going in the street? Because if you don't know my story, if you have listened, I went to PATH and they denied me. So I hadn't really nowhere to go. And my ex-husband was in Jamaica. So that's the problem all by itself. So that was the thing. So it's like, I was so grateful to be in my own place on the floor. Didn't matter. My daughter, and I'm like, I hugged her up and we slept. The ground was so hard, but I didn't care. But I was just so grateful to have. It's like it's something different, you know. That's having your own place, having your own keys. I'm not the greatest like a great cook, but I had my own stove because my shelter didn't even have a stove. They had a microwave. Like my first shelter had a stove, but when I stayed in the like for the year and change, I didn't have a stove. I couldn't make a boil of water if I wanted to unless you put in the microwave. And I'm not used to microwave food. I'm Jamaican. We're used to having our home cooked meals on our stove, and that's it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have a stove. Like people don't think about these things. I have a stove. Like I don't know, but John helps out so many people. He helps out the youth. He helps out families. As like I said again, that's the area we work in. But I feel like it shouldn't be so much different areas. And I feel like also because of that, when we make the laws and we want like 90-day rule or this rule passed, that rule passed, we have to literally break down into groups because all the rules are put into different categories for the different groups. So it could be, oh, something for families is done, but something for singles is not done. And to me, that doesn't make sense. If we just put it all in one category, we could break one rule at a time instead of doing everything separately. I know it sounds, in my mind, it sounds like it's easy, but I know to untangle the web and put it together as one is going to take a lot. But if we work as together as a team, I think we can make it happen. I think we really could make it happen because it's so annoying. I work with not only families, I work with people who do like something with singles and a lot of youth and stuff like that, and stuff for the COC and things like that. And John also, I see her in COC meetings and things like that for youth. And I'm like, to me, it's just so crazy to me that like when they talk about certain rules, I'm like, but I thought about the same rule in families, but because it's in different areas, we can't work together as a team. So we're almost butting heads to get one thing down the pipeline. If we just work together, we can get this thing broken for everybody. It's so annoying to me, but I'm just one person, just one voice. So hopefully, whoever's hearing this in the mayor's office or in the state could help me out, like help us out, because we're struggling down here. We're really trying to make it, and it's just like hitting a brick wall. But I don't know. But what do you like most about your job? Like, what, in your opinion, about what do you do? What do you like most?
That's a really good question. I mean, the goal of what we, well, one thing, I love working with you, obviously.
Thank you.
That's a lot of fun. We have really great people. There's a lot of really great work, and we get to know each other over time and get to learn things from each other. That's really important in any job,
Right.
Working with cool people. The thing that is most exciting is kind of what you were talking about, like seeing change at a citywide level from something that you were part of.
Right.
If we pilot something and the city takes notice of it, or we make the city take notice of it, we push it to them, we get them to pay attention, and we show them that it works, and it works better than leaving people in shelter for a year. Then that kind of thing, and then the city changes and starts to change how it approaches it based on something that we've done. Those kinds of things are the thing I enjoy the most. And I just wanted to echo what you were saying. Like, we focus on youth and families. In this particular fund, in my work, my other work outside of the fund, we focus on everyone. I think you're 100% right. Everyone needs a home, regardless of who you are, what your household looks like, how old you are, whether you have kids or not. Every single human has to have a home. And I think one of the ways we have to get that is we all have to speak together. And we have to join together with people who are advocating and being activists on other issues. People who focus on incarceration, people who focus on healthcare, people who focus on education. All of having a home connects into every single one of those issues.
It does.
And every person involved, every school, every kid in school, every patient in a hospital system or in the healthcare system, every person going into and coming out of incarceration, everyone needs a home. And we have to join together with all of those movements. And we need those movements to join with us to make change, and to make our voices louder.
Definitely true. Well, I think one area we always forget, even myself, is the elderly. If we're lucky, we're all gonna be old, right? One day. And the thing about it, as you get older, unless you're like a millionaire, your money goes down because they're not working anymore, right? Even though granted they try to put up the age for retirement at this point. People they like at this point it seems like hundreds are working. But when you get older, you can't move as much. You just slower than, people who are as young as us. I'm not young, but I'm younger than a person who's 80. We tend to forget about them. I feel like a lot of times, and they don't have a lot of time because they can't pay rent and rent is going up unless they're in a place where it has like stabilized housing. And not everybody wants to go to a nursing home because it's just not for them. And sometimes not all nursing homes are the best. Let's be honest. Not everywhere nursing home is 100%. They're like about a 50 out of 100, and that's not a great number even for a passing score for a test. So I think we got to think about that also. Even though I know this is not the podcast for it, but I think we just need to make sure we cover everybody. I feel like I don't want nobody to be left out because eventually we're all gonna be old. We're all gonna be in this area. At one point, if you live to 100, you have passed through every stream of age and income and area of life to be in. Unless you're a billionaire, you're gonna struggle sometime. It's not gonna be up all the time, and we have to remember that. Is there anything that you are working on now, or you're working on now, that you would like to see be changed in New York City?
A lot.
Top five. Top five.
I think the biggest problem in New York is that our system is only set up to provide shelter.
Right.
So part of that's like, in the 80s when homelessness first started becoming a real crisis, in response to the crisis with it felt like a building on fire and you had to do whatever you took to put it out. And the solution that people came up with, or the response, it's not a solution, was to create a right to shelter. And we're the only city in the country that has a right to shelter. Right. And that's definitely better than not having a right to shelter. Like if no one has a right to shelter, being on the street is probably, for most people, not everybody, but for most people, it's worse than being in a shelter, depending on what the shelter's like. Right. But it's not a solution. And so we're now spending, $3 or $4 billion a year keeping people homeless, keeping them in shelter. And instead of spending that money or spending a similar amount of money helping people get homes.
That's true.
And so what I want to try to do is, and we're not invested in preventing people from becoming homeless to begin with, or helping them quickly get into a permanent home as soon as they lose the home they're in. So that's what the fund is really, that's what our biggest mission is, to try to redesign the system so that we focus on preventing people from becoming homeless to begin with, helping them stay in their homes when they want to stay, when they're stable. If they're facing housing instability or insecurity, or facing eviction, or if they have been evicted or they have lost their home for whatever reason, or they need to leave for whatever reason, if they're in a DV situation, or the home is really bad and not well maintained by the landlord, whatever reason they want to move, having a system that helps people immediately get into a permanent, safe, quality, affordable home. That's the goal. The other big thing that I started to talk about before is, like I said, the system is built around this false idea that homelessness is because of the household's failure. And so as a result, it's designed to treat people like failures and to not give them control over their own resources and over their own decision making. And it treats people like prisoners often. I mean, I don't know if this is how you would describe your experience, but like you didn't get to choose that you didn't have a stove or a microwave. You don't have the same choices that everyone else has about their home when you're in shelter. So we need to blow that up and put the resources in control of the household. Let the household control the resources that are being spent on them. Because they know, each household knows best what its situation is, what the solutions are, and what its goals are. We design a one-size-fits-all system, it ends up being a one-size-fits-nobody system. And instead, we should have the power and the control over resources and decision-making start with the household. If they want and need support, they should be in control of where they go to get support. We should have all kinds of support systems available to people, but like we do in every other aspect of the world, In the middle class world, where if you have an accountant or you have a lawyer, you have, childcare, you're the customer and you're in charge of how it works. And if you're not satisfied, you can move on. Like, we need a system that looks like that, and is responsive to the expertise that people have over their own lives. So that's what we want to. Those are the two things, the big things we want to change. Sort of that the system focuses on prevention and solutions, not just on crisis management and shelter, and that it turns power back and resources back into the control of families and households themselves.
Right. What came to my mind just now when you said basically make a thing where fit to everybody. I don't know why the link came in my mind, but if you don't know what link is, it was a voucher way. They had CityFHEPS and they had FHEPS and then they had the link program. They had like 1, 2, they had like a bunch of numbers. Like I think it went up to like 1 to 5, something like that. But you had to fit in a certain category to actually get in it. So if you like one for disability, one for DV, they had a different things. But it was so like, if you don't strike off they had like example, if they had the first one had like 5 different categories. And if you didn't go fit in every single category, you didn't even fit in to get that link. So it was really hard to get in it. I feel like we need programs or housing or this thing. It shouldn't be so much. It shouldn't be a hectic dance just to get in it. To be able to get an example. CityFHEPS, when I first got in, they told me to get in a shelter you have to get an eviction. And when I got there, they told me, oh, you need eviction, plus you have to owe your landlord money. So I didn't even qualify for CityFHEPS because I didn't owe my landlord any money. I just got the eviction because where I was honestly wasn't safe, wasn't the greatest. The lady wasn't that nice of a person living with. That's what the second time I went homeless. It was a whole thing, guys. I have my story up. Y'all can go listen to it. But I feel like they should have the things out for us, but don't make it hard to get in it and to get the things that we actually need. It shouldn't be a fight to get these programs. If we need a little help, you know how to qualify for no vouchers now. If you need a help, you need to just be able to get the help and not. I'm not gonna say make it too easy for people to scam. I think about that also, scamming, but most times people who want to get the help are not trying to scam the system. You know what I'm saying? They really need the help because their family needs the help. And I think a lot of times also the gap where they put the money, especially now because a lot of things are expensive, the money people are getting and the gap that the ceiling they give you that, oh, you're going to make less than $15 an hour when minimum wage in New York City is $15. It doesn't make sense because they do everything by how much you make in your family size. If you have 2 people in your family and making $15, they say, oh my gosh, that's too much money. $15 an hour in New York City for 40 hours a week is not it can hardly cover the rent. It doesn't make sense. They might have to do things state by state and family by family, because honestly, one size does not fit all. This is not a hat. This is not a pair of socks. This is not how it works. We have many different sizes for clothes, large, medium, and small. We need to have that for our vouchers, our HRA with food stamps. Right now, I feel like I should qualify for food stamps, but I don't, and I don't make that much. And it's like, granted, and I live in public housing. So can you imagine if I tell you I live in public housing, that means my rent is only 30% of what I make, right? That's one thing. And then I have a daughter. I'm a foster mom. Granted, you get money for the foster kid, so the foster kid doesn't count. So it's me and my daughter, KK, right? So that's 2 people on my thing, and I don't get food stamps. Something's off there, something's definitely off. Because if I tell you I can afford, like, I can afford food, obviously we're eating. I'm not gonna say we're out here starving, but if I had an extra help of having food stamps, that'd be better. My daughter got PEBT the other day. I was so happy. I was like, oh my gosh, we can get a little extra stuff, a little extra chips here and there. It's not healthy, I know, but little extra things. It makes you feel happy. It brings your spirit. Like the smallest things brings your spirit up. It just, people don't think about that. Oh, you get your hair done. People like, oh my, don't waste money on that. I'm a person who can't do hair. So if I just get money to do my hair, I'm like, oh my God, I feel so fabulous. You feel good. And it makes you happy. It makes your body, it makes you be better. People don't want to think about everything is an intersection with your life. If you don't have money, if you don't have an apartment or a house, if you don't have clothes, if you don't have food, all these things can make you start getting sick. People don't think about the stress that can happen on your actual body. People sometimes hair fall out. They're picking at eyelashes. They're digging their skin. Because I know I have a digging skin problem. When I'm stressed, I'm digging. It'll be nothing there, and I'm digging these things are mentally bothering you. If you don't know, the mental illness rate in New York City has risen. We should have known this in Corona. It has risen. People are stressed. these things stress you out till you go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Like that's how it is. And when all these things, it just don't have the money for food, money for this, you go a little crazy. When you're by yourself, it's like, okay, but when you're a parent, I'm not saying singles don't get on me that you're not important. You are important. But when you're taking care of another person, say your mom, your child, people don't think about, oh, when I'm older and my mom is old, that means if she's sick, I got to take care of her. These are things we got to think. If you're more than one person in a household, and there's 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, that means the stress is going to be on everybody else. We're all stressed together. And when people are stressed together, that's violence go up. That means the DV rate. People only think about mother, woman and man. No, mother and child. It could be anybody in the family. It could be a DV rate going up. People don't think about these things. Everything intersects, and we need to get housing together. We need to put the rates for food stamps for people that, like, even if don't get them cash, it's fine. But at least for the food stamps part, like, come on, like, put the rate for that up. People, it's a lot of, our system has a lot of problems, and I feel like I'm trying to tackle all of them all the time on the podcast, right? But it's just like we need to work together as one to get this together. Especially like New York, California, their their homeless crisis, because especially don't have a right to shelter, a lot of people are living on the street. I feel like probably more than New York. I'm not sure statistic wise, but their homeless shelter problem, homeless problem in general is out of control. As you know, as John said before, we have right to shelter. Basically, we're taking everybody, right? Because of that, we attract a lot of people who are not from New York. We have a lot of migrants coming in right now. The numbers are going up and up. You heard me talk about that on an earlier podcast with Alyssa about how she saw a lot of people coming in, and then all of a sudden they saw families coming in. Can you imagine? As I said in that podcast, traveling with your families through the jungle. It's just like a lot of different things intersecting, and we could honestly, we're trying our best to help the people we have here already, and we have people coming in. It's a lot. I know this is like not what the subject was talking about, but it's just like it's so many different things and problems happening at once, and it's driving, honestly, everybody up the wall. I don't know about any other state. I don't live there. I live in New York, and honestly, I don't look at other statistics. But if we're getting bad too, I'll assume that California with a high homeless rate is also getting bad with violence and things like that because of everything happening at the moment. It can be a lot. If you're a person who's listening who can be able to help to turn the wheels in different, you might not be able to help every single situation I'm talking about right now, right? But you're able to help something to be a better person, to crack a smile to somebody, because a smile can make a person day brighten up. Just I don't smile all the time on the street, especially in New York, it kind of be kind of mean. That's like walking. The people are kind of crazy when you're too friendly. But if you're in a place where you feel safe, smile for somebody, open the door for somebody, just be a kind person. That could change a whole person's day, whole person's attitude. Who needs probably a little smile? People in the HRA office, because they need probably hugs too, and a little raise. I'm just saying, because they don't get paid enough half the time. But it's a lot of different things. I feel like I'm going off on a tangent as I do, but it's just like we need help. Who's gonna help us? But oh my gosh! But John does so much with what he's doing and his philanthropy work. I'm gonna make him I've been talking to for like about 5 minutes. I'm gonna make him talk now because I'm taking it over. But it's just so much.
I mean, I think like one of the things that we're doing that is because of what you're saying is like we're piloting a project where young people who are experiencing homelessness get cash, $1,250 a month for 2 years every month, and then they also get supportive services if they want them, but they're not required to get the services if they don't want them or they don't find them helpful. Most of them are using the services and most of them really value the services, but it's not a requirement to get the cash. And part of it is like, because of what you're saying, like we create all these programs that are really hard to get to access. There's all these different rules for an eligibility. And if you have one thing that's different, you don't fit in this box, then you don't get any help. Or to keep it, it's really hard, or doesn't fit your situation, or you can get it, but it takes a really long time to get, and you're in trouble until then. Like we have a solution for this, which is cash. Right. Like cash allows people it understands that people know what they need to fix their situation, and things that you were describing, like extra food and getting your hair done, like little things that the government might not think are important. You understand the value of it to your life and your well-being. You may be interviewing for jobs. and you may need to feel confident in how you look, and
Right.
you want to look good when you go on a job interview.
Exactly.
And because people want to hire someone that looks together. And so you might know what you need. You do know what you need more than anyone else. The other thing is we're already doing this. So this is the craziest thing that we don't connect. If you're a homeowner and you have a mortgage and you pay taxes,
Right.
you have to deduct your mortgage interest on your taxes. That's a complicated, but the government gives you a check. The average check is about $15,000 as a housing subsidy when you file your taxes. They don't make you go to an office. You don't have to, get fingerprinted. You don't have to fill out forms other than your taxes, which you're already doing anyway. They don't tell you what to spend the cash on.
Right.
They don't send it on an EBT card that can only be used in certain places for certain things. They just fold it into your taxes so that it feels like you don't even realize you're getting this subsidy. You're getting a housing welfare check, but it's hidden. It's folded into your taxes. And the richer you are, the more expensive your home, the bigger your mortgage, the more money you get.
Right.
Whereas everyone else is like, I make $1 more than the cutoff for food stamps or for for my rent subsidy, and I don't get anything.
Exactly.
System, the more you make, the more you get in subsidy. Right. And it's totally flexible. We let you spend it. You don't have to spend it on your mortgage interest if you don't want to. If you want to spend it on a family vacation because you think that's what your family needs right now for your kids to recover and do better in school, you get to make that decision.
Right.
So we need a similar system for everybody. A similar system that treats everybody the same, that acknowledges that everybody knows better than anyone else what's best for them, and that gives people predictable, regular support, and that allows them to make sure that they have a home. And so that was a great, all you're saying it's tangents, but it's not tangents. We all live intersecting lives. Right. Where things, food, housing, jobs, healthcare, mental health, all of those things are happening at the same time to all of us. And we're having challenges and successes and failures and ups and downs and all of those things at once. We need flexibility and stability to be able to handle all those challenges ourselves and support when we want it, when we need it. So, the system we have right now isn't for wealthy people. And because of the history I described, that's mostly white people. It is designed to be like that. It gives you that check every year when you file your taxes. You can predict it, and you have flexibility in doing what you want with it. And we spend as a country way more on that than we spend on Section 8 or food stamps or any one of those programs.
Right.
The size of the mortgage interest subsidy program that our government is using to subsidize homeowners used to be like $100 billion a year, which is, I'll tell you, is way bigger than public housing, than what we spend on Section 8, than what we spend on food stamps, combined, probably. So we have the money. We're just not being just and equitable and fair in how we put it out into the world. So that's what we need to change. And we all need to join together to push for that change.
That is so true. Like, this has come up before with me and somebody else, Samantha. If you guys seen in season 1, she came on and told us about things. I want to say Riseborough, I believe. And she was talking about like home ownership and how people don't think about how basically homeowners are getting checks every year for this, like John said, and people think about like, public assistance is getting something or Section 8 is getting something, but if you own a home, you get money back. It's not frowned upon because you have a home and you get money back in your taxes. And the thing I think also could be knowledge. People just don't know it when you have a house that happens to you. Like, I'm thinking, honestly, I want to buy a home. I can't really afford it in New York City and I don't want to move anywhere else. I still want to get it. But I think about it, if I think about it how John is saying it, I can literally get a check for it every single year. And they have like first home buyers. They have even programs to help you to get a home. You know, New York is very expensive right now, guys. So probably not right now until interest rates die down a little bit. But if you can afford it, get it because it's kind of almost cheap if you think about it compared to rent. The only thing is something breaks, you gotta fix it. That's the only thing I think about with the home. It's like you want to get a home, but if the pipe bursts or something like that, it's not like you're calling the landlord to fix it. You are your own landlord, so you have to make sure you have enough money for that. So I'm not telling you to go outside and just like buy a home, go crazy. You got to think about what everything that is entailed. If you have an HOA fee, I think that's what it's called. You gotta make sure your house is up to standards. It just can't be that's out there being an eyesore to your community either, depending on where you live. Some areas they have to keep it up more than others, especially if you live in like Long Island or something like that. They're very, very, I feel like strict and their taxes are very high over there. But they say they also have better school systems, so it depends on where you live. But it's a lot that go into it, but they do make a lot of money and they don't put it out there like, oh my gosh, we're getting a subsidy, but technically you get one every year. But a person who lives Section 8 or CityFHEPS or something like that, you're frowning down and looking at them crazy because people do all the time. Like somebody asked me about a voucher because they wanted to get a person a voucher at their home, and they was like, in their mind, I'm explaining to them so they can understand what's going on, and they're like, no. But also, I'm not gonna lie to you, vouchers do pay late, so people get tired about that too. That's a different story for a different time. But it's like they're like, I want to get the money. Da, da, da. I understand you want to get your money because a person's living there using your water, your light, and all these things, so it makes sense. But it's like you get every year you get money from the like from your taxes. Like it just to me, people don't see it like that, but it's basically the same thing. It just it's done in different ways, so it doesn't look a certain way. And as John said, people who benefit most from it is white people, to be honest. But the rest of us don't really know. Even to for me, I do a contract. Most of my jobs are contract jobs, right? Um, People don't know that you can put so much things in your taxes for a contract job, like transportation, even certain clothes if it's work clothes, things like that. But if you don't have the knowledge on it, you're not going to do it. You're just going to pay out because your taxes when you have a contract job, it costs is a lot. The taxes are crazy because you're not paying taxes every month. So when you do your taxes for the year, you're paying out a lot of taxes because they didn't take it the whole year, right? So, but you could put if you put a lot of things in expenses, that money goes less and less and less. But when you're not educated on these things, like certain other people are, you kind of just like, all right, whatever. I forget that coffee that you got at Dunkin' Donuts at a meeting could be put into your taxes because you did it at a meeting for your job. So it's all about knowledge in these things. I think honestly, certain things like this, example, the cash program he said for the youth, if I feel like and I feel like it should be probably even middle class because honestly, people middle class because they can't get certain like help in food stamps. I'm kind of middle class. I'm like lower middle class at this point, right? We can't get certain things from the city. I think that cash program should probably be done for middle class kids and down, all kids in New York City or anywhere in the U.S. To be honest, because I feel like you're leaving high school. Sometimes you might have like four other siblings, and you honestly it's too much for a two-bedroom apartment to have these bunch of kids in there. And you might want to move out. You might want to do something else. You might be going way out of state to school, but because you are a resident in New York, you can have that money still with you while you're in college. You could buy books or something like that if you can't afford it. Because you know when you move from state to state for school, you don't get all the financial aid you're supposed to get because you're not in that state anymore. That can help out a child to eat or something like that. And I feel like if they did this for all kids, like I know they right now they have a program in Corona that is put like a college fund away for like kindergarten, first grade. But when they started it, my daughter didn't get it cut off, and I'm upset about that. But beggars can't be choosers. I'm happy some kids are getting something, But I feel like sometimes they start with the younger kids. But right now, kids are leaving high school last year, this year, in the next couple of years. By the time those first graders and kindergarten get it, it's gonna be like 12, like 10, 11 years from now, yeah, we're helping them, but what about the kids right now who's going to be kind of suffering when they're leaving high school or even foster children? There's a lot of foster kids are graduating high school, and when people stop getting the check at 18, them kids are out in the street. Or kids who are getting adopted, them kids are out in the street. So you have to make you'd be surprised, a lot of youth who are because in New York City is from 18 to 24. A lot of them are foster kids. You be very they supposed to get help, and some of them don't know what help they can get, so they just kind of go in the system and they kind of are lost out there in the world. And it's supposed to be before they kick them out of the system. I think it's until 21, I believe. Don't quote me on this age, but they're supposed to get them the proper skills to survive. But with all the kids that we have in the system, it's hard to get everybody on board, even though that's their job. But the system is overwhelmed. A lot of things are overwhelmed. And there's not enough staff to honestly do it. So kids are out there just kind of trying to fake it till they make it, to be honest, right? So if we start off every kid as they turn, some kids graduate high school at 17, depending, well, in New York City, we're done by year. So if your birthday, like example, mine was supposed to be when I graduated when I was 17, my birthday is in November. So I would get the money, I think, at 17. I think that would be proper, or 18, or wherever you graduated high school. If you graduate at 16 and you want to move out, I feel like if you can afford it and have extra money to do so, you should be able to do that. If you're going to college out of state, that money just, travel with you. I think that's what we should do. When you graduate high school and get a GED, because something could have happened that you don't finish actual high school, you get a GED, that still counts. If you're like 30 and get your GED, I feel like you shouldn't get that money. I'm just saying. But if you're like in a age range from like 25 and down and get your GED or high school diploma, I think you should qualify for this money and be able to start your life off great. Because a lot of times, I was lucky enough to have a bank account made for me when I was younger, and to have a little cushion. Not like a lot, but it was a good amount of not a good amount. It's about like $1,000 to change. It's not a lot, but it's still it's better than not having no money. Going out in the college world, just have nothing. So I think if we gave those kids, so that money every month, like how John is saying, like I think he said $1,200 every month for 2 years. That you could build a nice little savings, especially if you're living on campus and if you're getting financial aid and scholarships and all these things. You might have enough money by the time if you save all that money up to get a house when you get out of college. Or a lot of people when they leave college, they have so much debt they could pay that back or get somewhere to live or something like that. So it's like this could help out us, and it could honestly help out the economy, because once people have money, the economy gets more money because they have to spend on food, clothes, rent. To me, it's like a circle of life. There's a line here. We can all do this together as a group,
Is
I think
that
that would be great.
it's not new. We did this. So like the whole reason we have home ownership in the country is because of the Depression. We were in trouble. No one had money. Everyone was losing their job. The people who did own their homes were losing them in foreclosure. And we did something about it. We created a new thing, a new kind of mortgage that let people who couldn't afford houses afford them.
Right.
And then created a huge subsidy for that to help them stay there. And we can do it again. We did it for one group of people and it worked super well. Right. Now, sure, we do it for everybody. Like let's create a new kind of mortgage that lets people today who can't buy homes, just like the way we did it 100 years ago in the Depression. Like, let's do it again for everybody. Let's create a new program that lets people buy their own home and stay in their own home and build up wealth. Just like we've done it before, we can do it again. And you were talking about giving people with kids money. We did it for a year during the pandemic. We created credit. Right. We cut it off, and it worked. It lifted millions and millions of kids out of poverty.
Right.
Like, and it's this exact same thing as the mortgage interest subsidy. Like it's just a tax credit.
Right.
We give $15,000 as a subsidy to homeowners who are paying a mortgage. We did the same thing for people with kids. Instead of doing it all at once, they paid it out every month because that's more predictable and more helpful to families. But it's not any different than what we're doing for homeowners already. It's just acknowledging that, like what you were saying, home ownership is tough. You have a lot of expenses, and like if something breaks, you're responsible for maintaining it. So to support those people, we give them cash every year in their taxes. Raising kids is really important and really tough. Having that is really helpful for the families and for the kids and for all of us. Right. If those families are well, we're all well. If those kids have stable childhoods, everybody benefits. And so it's worth it to give those families a little bit of that tax credit money every month so that they're more stable, they have more cushion. If there's a shock, they can absorb it, they can handle it, they can predict, they can plan. Like we've already done it. We already know it works. Let's keep doing it. Let's do more of it. Let's make sure we do it for everybody, especially the people we've cut out from accessing all this stuff for so long. Let's start there. I totally agree.
And that pandemic money was amazing. I'm just saying, I feel like I was the richest in the pandemic. So it seems like, granted, I was home majority of the time, but it's just like, you had money to save, you had money to get stuff that you never got before for your kids. Like, My daughter was grateful for that. Christmas was good. She had more presents than I could probably count under the Christmas tree. A lot of them are eyesores now because there's a little bit of toys involved. Um, but it's just like, especially you seeing your child have everything that you think your child should get, because no parent want to see their child not have anything, right? You want your child to see your child to have the best, go to the best colleges, and have the best future. And when you don't see that, it's like you're almost like, I'm a bad parent. Like when I slip up on something, like, man, I did everything else right for the day. That one thing, I'm like, man, I really failed her. I really feel this girl, and I feel so bad for her. So I can understand when a parent doesn't get everything they want for their child. Um, you can feel away. So I feel like what it is, we need to keep the programs going and find a way to sustain it. Also, I feel like, yeah, we can give out money all the time. Granted, it goes back into the economy, as I said earlier. So I guess that's probably the way to sustain it a little bit, because it goes back. If you give a person money and back to school's coming up, they're gonna have to put it back to stores because they have to go have back to school shopping. So that's a way of getting it back into the economy. So I feel like, honestly, if you have a child at a certain income, as they did probably in Corona, and just keep on going with it. They say they want to start it back up. We'll see what happens. We don't know for sure. We don't work in that sector of the world and government or whatever. But that would be pretty cool to have those things for families and things like that, because it's hard out here. It really is hard to make it. And I feel like in the other states, even in states when it's easier, I guess, living, they're struggling too. So you'd be very surprised right now. A lot of inflation. Before, when I had food stamps, I didn't look at the food prices, but now I'm like, beef costs that much? Before I just picked it up, I'm like, whatever, I need to eat, whatever. Still have to pick it up because I still have to eat regardless. But I'm like, look at the prices now. I'm like, man, I have to really add up all my cents here just to get this to make some tacos. And it's just tacos. So it's like, is it cheaper to go outside and go to Taco Bell than me making it at home? That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, is it cheaper? I know it's less time. Like I just order it and bring it home. But I think all of these, if we could just all help out each other, like, if they could help us out, we could help them out. It could just be a good circle for us to just kind of live here. Um, it's really hard, but I hope everything that we do, it doesn't go in vain. Hopefully we can really help out the communities that we work for and things like that. Do you have any last word for the people, John?
Uh, yeah, that we're sending all our love out to everybody. We've all been through struggles. We all need to support each other and be on the same team. And I'm so grateful to you, Khadijah, for working with me and for all we get to do together and for bringing me on today.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming to the Hear Our Voices podcast. If you want to follow us, go on YouTube, go on Facebook, go on Instagram, and we're gonna have giveaways coming up again. We had our last giveaway, and the giveaway winner has not come to us yet. So hopefully, there's a couple of days gonna run out soon. But hopefully she gets to us in time to get her a gift, her prize, her restaurant credits, I could say, for whatever restaurant she picks. Well, the few that we have, like, Applebee's, BBQs, things like that. And if you have any ideas of things we should do or have a giveaway for, we would definitely love to hear your ideas. We might be going live by the time you see this, it already passed. But we're gonna be doing lives on our YouTube channel. So in the future, just check us out on there. You'll see me and probably my other people cohorts, who's working with me behind the scenes, and Lorden, who works on the scenes on the Spanish podcast. If you're a person who also speaks Spanish or who'd love to be on the podcast, I don't do the Spanish version, but Lorden definitely will do that. All you gotta do is DM us at Hear Our Voices. Everything will be linked down below in the link tree. And thank you guys for listening again, and see you next time. Bye, guys.